Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about the Twilight Zone from the 1980s. This is Season 2, Episode 6. It's called The Convict's Piano. So once again, there's only one story here. I think the next episode's also only one story and then we're back to the multiples. But this one is about a prisoner, obviously, based on the title, who's a musician and eventually kind of finds this piano that's sort of all dusty and it's cooped up in like a storage area. And he discovers that when he plays this piano, he is transported to a different time period where the piano used to be, whether it was in a nightclub or somewhere in a park, and he's in that time period when it was used there. But when he stops playing the piano, he fades back into his real existence in the prison. So he's literally only there when he's playing the piano. As soon as he stops, he fades back into the prison. So this is a very kind of typical trope of Twilight Zone, right? We've had many episodes in the original show and even one or two in the 80s version where a character somehow goes into the past, usually their own past. This isn't quite the same as that, but this idea of escaping into a different time period. And I think in this case, what I like about the concept is like the very, very almost like just blinding metaphor of this idea of music being an escape, and especially the idea of a prisoner who has no access to the outside world but loves music, like can use music to kind of like have his mind be somewhere else. And this actually predates this, of course, the example I'm going to bring up, but you know, I can't help but think of the big scene in Shawshank Redemption when Andy plays the music and Morgan Freeman makes the big speech about how every last prisoner in that building felt free. That's the kind of like vibe that you get from just the idea of escaping through art, of escaping through music, and that if you have that, then no one can really do anything to you. Like, you're not really a prisoner if you can escape with that. So that stuff is there, but it does have a kind of a fun little twist at the end as well, that gives it more of a payoff, and there's a little bit of setup for it. That twist being that when he goes back to a certain time period, he convinces someone else to play the piano in that time period, and once this other guy starts playing the piano, he walks away from the piano, and he stays in that time period, and the person that he switched with fades away once he's done into the prison, and it's like karma for him, because you're probably thinking, well, that's unfair, he's just put an innocent person in prison. No. The person he puts in prison at the end is, one, a mobster who's killed people, and two, specifically, he framed another guy who's in the prison and has been there for 50 years. He's this old guy in the prison that the main character befriends, and he tells this story of, oh, he was this mobster, he was my friend, but then we both were attracted to the same woman, so he framed me to get rid of the competition, and that's, you know, this is who is turned in. So he fades away from playing piano in this nightclub in the 1930s or whatever it is, and ends up in the prison, and the old man that he wronged, who's spent 50 years of his life in prison, is there to like welcome him to the prison and say, you're where you belong. Now, admittedly, I don't know what happens once the guards discover this guy who's there, who's not supposed to be there, and what they do with that information. I mean, at the very, maybe he'll be arrested for breaking into a prison, perhaps. I don't know. But regardless, that's how it ends. And it's a fun little moment, actually, because you kind of like don't realize that he can switch with someone, but as soon as this mobster like sits down, because he's like, oh, you don't know this song I want you to play, the girlfriend's like, oh, show him how to play it, and he's like, yeah, I'll show him how it's done. As soon as he sits down and starts playing, you notice that the main character's still playing some keys, like he keeps doing it, but then after like a few bars, he kind of pulls his hands away and he stands up and he walks away from the piano, and it's like, oh, because as soon as the other guy starts playing the piano, you get the idea, oh, I think what can maybe happen here. And as soon as he stands up and walks away, leaving the mobster playing the piano, you're like, oh, he's going to fade back to the prison. Like, he's sort of handed him the hot potato, and he's going to go back to the prison, and he's going to get to stay in the past a free man. And if you're thinking, oh, this prisoner, doesn't he belong in prison for what he did? Now, we don't really know for sure. Like, we only really have his word. But he does say in the episode that he is innocent. He did not kill someone. In fact, it's very similar to Andy Dufresne when we find out that his ex-wife turned up dead. But it was in his car, but his car was stolen, but he could never prove that. However, the episode does start with this character stopping another prisoner from being stabbed. Like, he has no reason to intervene other than he just doesn't want someone to be killed. So it does kind of give you an example of his moral compass at the very least. So you at least, it gives you an indication that he's probably telling the truth. He is probably innocent. He probably doesn't deserve to be here. And the guy that he switches with frames someone else for murder. So yeah, he does deserve to go in. So the ending's quite happy. I think personally, be a little sad about it's been stuck in the past, because I'm a modern boy that loves technology. But you know what? Prisoner being free in a previous decade, I don't know. Maybe that is a better choice. But he does get to walk away at the end and live in the past. And admittedly, it may be tough to start his new life, but the other guy got comeuppance, and it's kind of a nice little story. So that's the overall premise and the way it ends of the episode. I had a good time. I think this is a pretty solid episode. I think it's got a solid idea. It takes a little bit of time before it gets to the Twilight Zone kind of gimmick, because, you know, we start this episode off and you see him like sort of like moving his hands on the table like he is playing a piano. He's sort of like air piano playing effectively. So you get that he's into music, but the episode kind of revolves around him breaking up this fight, getting cut when he breaks up the fight. And he goes to the prison doctor, who says, hey, you're not really fitting in here. Like, you're pissing off all of the groups by intervening here. Like, the person you protected was a black man. The black gang isn't going to accept you. The white gang that was trying to like stab him are going to hate you now. You're not really fitting in anywhere. And so there's kind of this almost ticking time bomb of like, these guys are out to get him, and they try and like come at him a couple of times. One, the old guy who's befriended by that point kind of steps in and tells him to leave him alone. But the next time they corner him, they get interrupted by a guard, but the bad guy, like this bald prisoner who's coming after him, he's like, I'm going to kill you. Or maybe I'll just paralyze you and you'll be so thankful that I let you live. And he doesn't really finish like where he's going with that, but it kind of sounds like he's saying he wants them to give him some sexual favors and be his like little slave, effectively. So like, it really is feel like it's counting down where he kind of needs to do something to get out of here. So there's some ramping up of the stakes and the tension. Now, yeah, they're a bit tropey. They're typical prison things of like, oh, like, you know, mean prisoner's mad at him and wants to kill him or possibly have sex with him, and he has to fear that. It's pretty much by the numbers in that sense. It's not too gratuitous, though. It doesn't like get into any details, and it doesn't like overstay its welcome or anything like that. And the sequences where he does go to use the piano, because I kind of jumped to the last one, like, you know, he befriends the old guy and he mentions that he can play music, or the old guy already knows that, and he's like, hey, since you can't do the hard labor right now because you're technically injured with that hand, could you still play the piano? And he's like, yeah, but where am I going to get a piano in here? And he's like, well, it just so happens. And it turns out the reason why this piano is here is because his friend who framed him, the mobster, actually sends it. We find this out in the final scene, is that he wants to replace that piano with a grand piano. So he says, hey, let's get a grand piano, and he tells someone to send this old piano to the prison to remind his friend of like what he's missing or something to that effect. It was like he sends it to taunt him. So it's like an extra dick move just to remind the audience he deserves what's about to happen to him. So that's pretty neat. But when we find the piano and it's like really badly out of tune and it's all the rest of it, but he still plays it, right? He sits down and he starts practicing. And the world just kind of fades around him, and it ends up that he's in like a park and he's like kind of confused, and it doesn't last very long because he very quickly stops playing because he's kind of freaked out. But then he just fades back to the present. He fades back to the prison, and it's like, oh, okay, that's weird. He also thinks that maybe the song that he plays has something to do with what time period he gets sent back to with the piano. I don't know if they ever really confirm if that's true or not. I mean, it's a nice idea. The second time he plays the piano, though, he goes back to a bar that the old guy had already also told him about, and he actually talks to like a soldier who's there. It seems to be kind of around World War II time, and he's talking to the soldier who buys him a drink, and he's able to sort of keep playing the piano with one hand as he takes a sip of the beer, and it's kind of like this moment of like catharsis, because obviously he's not had that in prison for quite some time, and it's like this like taste of freedom, a literal taste of freedom. And it's kind of this interesting little scene where he steals a matchbook that's sitting next to the piano as proof. And he tries to tell the doctor what he's seen. The doctor doesn't believe him when he's getting his stitches. But he shows the old man the matchbook and he recognizes the bar. He's like, wait a minute, like this looks new. How did you get this? And he tries to explain to him, and he says, "Hey, touch the piano, and I'm going to play something, and it'll take us." It doesn't actually work though, right? When he plays the piano, the old man doesn't come with him, and time still seems to pass. However, the old man does see him disappear. He does physically disappear from the world when he travels via the piano. And that was kind of implied earlier, actually, because the old man even says, like, "We were looking for you yesterday. Where are you? Where did you disappear to?" So they do establish some simple rules. The rules don't actually matter that much. Like, whether or not he appears or disappears when he's playing the piano, I don't think is actually that relevant to the outcome of the episode. So it's a neat little detail that I appreciate that they thought about, but also doesn't actually matter that much in the grand scheme of things. But all you know, by the time we get to the end, all the story from the old man about the backstory about being framed is all neatly set up, and the idea of the rules of the piano, and obviously all the reasons why the main character kind of needs to get away because he's in for a world of trouble here, because he isn't really, one, he doesn't belong there, right? In theory, anyway, he doesn't belong there, and two, other prisoners want to kill him. So it gives you all the reason in the world why he should try and pull something off. And, you know, he gets to this time period, and, you know, like, he realizes who the mobster is that he's talking to. He kind of clocks it, and when the mobster requests a specific song, he's like, "I don't know it," and he's like, "What do you mean you don't know it? It's the biggest song of the year." And all I'm thinking is, well, yeah, because it's like 50 years ago. Or close to 50 years ago. He's probably not familiar with what the most popular song was in, let me do the math, like the late 30s, early 40s? Maybe it was earlier than that? I don't know. It doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But, you know, I think this is a really simple concept, and while it's kind of like touching on territory that Twilight Zone's done before, it feels like it's got enough of its own little hook, right? It's got a nice framing device in the prison, and the idea that it's letting them escape prison. Because as much as we've had previous episodes where someone like walks down a street and ends up in the past, or they go through a door and they end up somewhere else, or something like that, this is the first time I think it's literally been a prison where they're getting freedom. Like, every time he plays the piano, and again, this ties into the metaphor of like the music making him feel free, right? The idea that if he has that love for something, and he can experience that, and when he does the music, when he gets to be a part of it, it lets him feel free. And this episode just makes it literal, and that's in a lot of ways what a lot of good science fiction or supernatural stories do, is it takes something that is metaphorical and makes it more literal. And in the end, he's able to outright escape via the art that he loves. So it's kind of like a love letter to the idea of what art can be, I guess, in a lot of ways, and like the idea of it bringing hope and comfort. But it's also kind of a fun little story with like a sort of time travel element where, because they do set it up early on, actually, that because the old man, when he's talking about this guy, this mobster who set him up and framed him, he does say that, oh, he framed me and he sent me that piano not too long before he disappeared. And the assumption in the moment is like, oh, he's a mobster. He either got killed or he ran away because the police were chasing him or something, and, you know, never was found again, or whatever it might be. No, but it was actually set up. It was set up for, no, he was always going to be sent to the past. And you would have to assume that the main character probably made sure that piano did go to the prison afterwards, just to keep the timeline intact and be like, no, that needs to be there so that when I'm born and grow up in the future, it's there for me to play so I can come back here. And who knows what other things he might have set up in the past, you know, as he's growing up again, or not again, but like growing up the rest of his life before he's even born. You know, it would, like, I mean, maybe this would be too cheesy, but you could almost imagine that when he's an old man, he would go and visit the child version of himself and like give him some advice or something. I don't know. Maybe give him his first piano. Who's to say? But regardless, it's a pretty solid episode. It has a clear narrative. It has a beginning, middle, and end. It doesn't feel messy in any way, and the ideas that it wants to get across, it does so in a solid manner. Like, I you know, it's not my favorite episode by any stretch, but this has been a pretty like mediocre season, barring this and the last episode, and I think this one's really sticking out because it feels really tight in its execution, you know, as opposed to some of the earlier ones in the season. So I'm actually quite happy with this one. The Convict's Piano is a solid Twilight Zone story, and I think it's one worth watching. Right? I think it's definitely I mean, maybe it's a B tier episode, but it's a really solid B tier episode. So there you go. That is my thoughts on the Convict's Piano. So we'll see. Have I been looking ahead at the next episode? I don't know if I've been doing that for the. I think I haven't been because it's been multiple stories, and it felt kind of weird to do it for that. So I won't do it just for these few because it's only one story per episode. But I used to do that for the classic one because it was always one story. This one's not like that though, which is why I didn't do it. I'm just realizing that. But just for a second there, I thought, am I supposed to like tease what the next one is? I'll say it's called The Road Less Traveled, and we'll see what that means next time. But. The next one is directed by Wes Craven. Ooh, that's actually, neat. That's pretty neat. This one was directed by Thomas J. Wright. I don't know if I know who that is off the top of my head. Yeah, this is someone who was like a second unit director and a bunch of stuff. Yeah, this is not a notable person. But Wes Craven next time. Hey, that's fun. So this was a Patreon sponsored review. I don't know if I said that at the start actually, but thanks for Cindy for making the pick if I didn't say that. I think I did that last month as well. But yeah, thank you very much. Thanks to all the patrons, of course, who support. It really does go a long way. You can support the show and the channel over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and help keep everything coming, both here and over in MailFuzz Movies, where all the movie podcasts live. So please go and have a look at that as well. But that is me. So thank you very much for joining me. Once again, I do appreciate it. Keep watching TV in the Twilight Zone.